So thanks to Ogre in the ensuing balance patch, I started playing Under Night again. And very unfortunately, I noticed a rapid drop off, even more dramatic than I would say is usual for fighting games after they receive a significant content patch. And so I wanted to know, why is this happening? What is somewhat unique to Under Night slash French bred games that causes such a massive lack of overall player retention? Now, just so I can show you exactly what I am talking about here, this is the Steam chart and you can see the date. This is from, obviously January, we don't care about, but this right here, very obviously, is the Ogre patch. 1,655 people logged on at a single moment in time after Ogre's patch. That was the peak amount of players for that particular day. The day after, almost 1,000 less peak. And you can see before Ogre, very shortly after Ogre, it fell off. It didn't even really last a week. And you can see from this last 30 days, percent gain, it's actually down. But I want to also show you Grand Blue Fantasy Versus. Around almost the same exact time frame, they had a similar balance patch alongside a new character in Sandalphon. And you see, prior to Sandalphon, kind of the same thing. They were falling off pretty hard. Then Sandalphon releases. But ever since then, they have still maintained a higher player count in the month since than they had prior to it, which again is in stark opposition to what happened here. So, why is this happening in Under Night? What is specific to this game that makes it so that, I've seen some arguments recently kind of like, hey, why aren't French bred games more popular? And quite frankly, I don't even care about that part right now. Because the simple fact of the matter is that they can't even hang on to the players that do buy the game. So what's going on there? So my argument, you'll see right here, is that the way they balance the games has resulted in an environment that is extremely hostile to players that are not taking the game extremely seriously. And so I think the way that they are balancing the game, the way that they continue to, by and large, almost exclusively buff characters every single patch, is harmful. And now, while I was formulating my thoughts about this entire process, I came across a video that's called Top Players Discuss UNI2's Ogre Patch. And in that video, Lid had this to say.
I really like how Byakuya was pre-patch, and I think you're right, definitely what you said earlier. They did have to give him his buffs to keep up with like what's going on, because the alternative is that we nerf everybody down to Byakuya, right? Or raise the weaker characters up towards Byakuya. But that's not really Kimone or French Bed's thing. So instead, we buff basically everybody, and now everyone is really strong. I do think it gives more of an identity to Uni 2, and it's not just uniclear but different with rollback. If we have to live in a world where all of our characters get buffed and everyone gets stronger, I think the way they handled it was the best way possible, in my opinion, except for Carmine, of course. But, outside of that.
And so he's right on the money when he said that, this is not Kimone or French bred style to try to balance around a specific character. Now, in case you missed the note that I already have here, I've been sitting on this for a long time. And obviously my coming back to the game and playing Nanase instead of Enkidu, Nanase was going to be my character of choice. He used Byakuya as his example. I think there are a solid, maybe even 10 or so characters that are in the game right now that you have a decent argument of like, these are perfectly balanced characters, or these were perfectly balanced characters, and they should be balanced around. So anybody below them should be buffed up. Anybody above them needs to be knocked down a peg or two. That's kind of the entire argument. But as Lid said, and as we can see from the balance patch, that is clearly not the style that French bred or Kimone wants to go with. But so I'm in direct opposition with Lid here in that I think that's a terrible way to balance the game. And the main reason you see here, I want to actually talk about this more in depth in a different video. But I believe the most significant issue facing Under Night and facing and getting people who are willing to buy the game in the first place, but who do not stick around, is the massive gap between not only the actual power level of offense versus defense, but the ease of use of offense versus defense. I feel like, obviously, this is not actually the case. This is a very melodramatic take about it. But I genuinely feel like when I am playing Under Night and I am on the offensive, I can just face roll my controller and shit out effective offense. Whereas when I am on defense, I have to be surgically precise. And there are many moments in time where even if you know the matchup, even if you know everything about it, there is still not a damn thing you can do unless you have Vorpal available to you so then you can chain shift and get out of the situation. The disparity between the amount of effort required to run solid offense versus running solid defense is night and day. And so the reason why this balance patch stuff is a bad thing is because you just wind up widening that gap. You continue making these characters stronger and stronger and stronger, and the defensive options, the majority of which are system mechanics, remain more or less the same. Now, yes, there have been some buffs. Obviously, we have the addition of Creeping Edge. Guard Thrust has been buffed, what, like 3 or 4 times? But it's still an incredibly costly mechanic. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. This is the stuff that I wanted to talk about in the kind of more in-depth video. But suffice to say that often feel hopeless when you're placed on defense in Undernight. And the vast majority of people will not like that feeling. And so I think another harmful aspect of fighting game balancing in general is that every single patch, the developers feel like they have to change every single character. Now, a large aspect of my dislike of this comes from my long history with Arc System Works, specifically BlazBlue, where my main character, Tager, got his tools changed basically every single version of the game, and yet they never improved. They were just different. And it's like, why even bother changing them at that point? Like, you're just throwing darts at a dartboard and saying like, hey, we gotta change this character. We gotta do something, right? We can't just leave them alone. We gotta do something, so let's just do this random thing that makes no damn sense. But it does often feel like a lot of changes to characters are just change for change's sake. Because they don't really know, well, this character doesn't really need anything. We don't really want to give them anything more, but we still need to do something. And I don't like that mentality. But that begs the question. Can the average fighting game player handle their character not getting changes? Will the blowback from the player base being like, well, what about my character? Why didn't you nerf? Why didn't you nerf my character? You know, fighting game players, they're all for nerfs for their characters. Sorry, misspoke. Why didn't my character get any love? All these other characters are getting stuff. And of course, there's also the other problem there, which is that obviously everybody is not in agreement with how a character stands. We even got a short peek of that with me saying I kind of disagreed that Uzuki was as bad as people thought she was pre-patch. And so that's going to be the case too. I was very early on. I said, Enkidu, he's feeling kind of weak. And I had multiple people coming at me saying, you're crazy. Enkidu is very obviously a top tier character. You are out of your mind. You are downplaying your main and you need to get good. And I was kind of like, shit, maybe. I'm not good at this game, so I can't come forward at somebody and be like, no, I'm amazing at this game and I know exactly what I'm talking about. I might have been wrong. I don't know. But that does result in a situation you're banking on the players of that character agreeing with your assessment that they're fine and they don't need changes. And not everybody's going to be in agreement there. We've all seen people who are playing a top tier character who refuse to believe that their character is as broken as they are. Over in Street Fighter 6, there's an entire meme developed around how every single Ken Masters player constantly calls the character the worst Shoto. Since day -100, whenever the hell the first beta was, people were saying Ken was terrible and needed help. He was not a very good character. And then as it turns out, he was one of the best characters and has remained one of the best characters for a long time. That kind of thing happens all the time. And so that's kind of the question is it better to just do some random dartboard change just to keep people satisfied that, hey, at least they did something for my character, at least they weren't just left alone, right? I don't know the answers to these questions because obviously I am not a developer and I have not ever looked into these kinds of metrics and I'm not analyzing people's reactions to every little thing. But all of this rambling aside, my overall point really is just this. Something needs to be done Because objectively, this is not good. And I would love to figure out how to fix the player retention issue. And so this is kind of just one aspect, one of the larger aspects, I think, contributing to this situation. So let me know what y'all think. Am I crazy? Am I delusional? Am I an old man shouting at clouds right now? Or do I got something going on? Do I have a good idea for once? Yeah. Thank you all for listening. Catch you all next time.